No one lives here, but here are recent pictures and footage of these islands, where construction workers are tasked to build warehouses and military installations. These islands are being built by China, but its main purposes has to do with power projecting, influence, and military presence. Expanding its offensive capabilities closer to US allies and regional states, China will not stop until it ensures its survival against the United States.
Tensions are rising in one of the most hotly contested regions on the planet, the South China Sea.
中国人民万岁！
I argue that War and Peace is the most important topic compared to the others we learned because it is best equipped to accurately assess the PRC's rise in the 21st century and the current great power competition between the People's Republic of China and the United States. Ranging from war to peace, this topic contains key points that can directly apply to the past, present, and future situations. Through the lens of realist constructivism, I find that PRC is an aggressive revisionist state that aims to counter the global democratic order in the international system. Before analyzing War and Peace, I want to establish my school of thought. As a realist constructivist, particularly a neoclassical realist and a critical constructivist, I draw from thinkers like Marcuse and Habermas from the Frankfurt School, then classicists like Morgenthau, who's a pertinent figure in the second generation of realism. And while War and Peace covers liberal theories like democratic peace and economic interdependence, I will only use realist theories as they are a more accurate approach to use when explaining current tensions. In general, War and Peace goes over key ideas, one being statescraft. Comparing persuasion and coercion in the US PRC context, I would assert that the PRC is currently using punishment deterrence, raising the cost for Taiwan, Western, and regional allies. Regarding credibility, understanding how to use capabilities and past performance is key to understanding adversaries. With escalation, we can learn that through the variance of dimensions and forms, both the PRC and United States can be seen moving deliberately up vertically and horizontally. Past the common terms, War and Peace also allows us to look at the reasons that lead from peace to war, where grievances, opportunities, and deterrence failures are more likely reasons a PRC would initiate war. Critically, grievances over Taiwan from the Cultural Revolution exist today, where we see ideological differences between socialism, Marxist-Leninism, Maoism, and democracy. To ensure the survival of the CCP and its power, Xi Jinping depends on uniting the PRC with Taiwan. Using our understanding of War and Peace when applied to US PRC contexts is the specific realist constructivist thought that assess systemic, state, and domestic factors reveal how the PRC prioritizes ideological, political, territorial, and military security. With leadership perceptions over these preferences, this allows us to gain a greater understanding of why the PRC views the current world order as unjust or unfavorable, as it threatens its survival and power. This is why it opens the door for further research as identities and preferences change over time. Starting off, economic relations in US PRC tensions reveal that economic relations fail to understand nuanced political understandings, and it takes economic theory as the baseline for understanding politics of the world economy, which is flawed. This is insufficient for analyzing great power competition. Neoclassical realism looks at how states prioritize security or power over economic gain, and economic interdependence, potentially raising the cost of conflict, does not eliminate the possibility of war when core security or survival interests are threatened. PRC leadership must retain control and fight for unification, and economic relations are typically just seen as tools of statecraft or as arenas of competition within a broader geopolitical struggle. Also, the PRC's economic rise is interpreted differently based on identities and perceived intentions, and are often analyzed through concepts of sovereignty, power, and potential conflict that's central to War and Peace. Also, PRC's economic rise is interpreted differently based on identities and perceived intentions, and are often analyzed through concepts of sovereignty, power, and potential conflict that's central to War and Peace. International law and agreements plays an important part in understanding US PRC relations, where negotiators constantly operate in horizontal and vertical theaters. Dealing with international and domestic issues, understanding two-level gains and win sets between parties are key. Yet, reliance on international institutions and dependence on compliance as credibility is weak. From a neoclassical realist perspective, following international law is strategic and based on state self-interest, rather than inherent respect for legal norms overriding security concerns. When vital security or survival interests are threatened, particularly by great powers, international law can be reinterpreted, challenged, or disregarded. The PRC overlooks international legal norms over self-determination for Taiwan, viewing it as a part of the PRC. In critical constructivism, we see power structures and competing interpretations shaping states' adherence to international law. War and Peace, by contrast, addresses conditions where international order breaks down, focusing on capabilities, deterrence, escalation of states in high-stakes environments. Class and Nation shows how Xi Jinping has begun developing his own thought, stressing the importance of ideology and classes, uniting China and Taiwan, and appealing to the global south. While crucial to understand internal drivers and ideological underpinnings, Class and Nation does not provide the primary framework for analyzing interstate dynamics and security competition. Domestic factors like ideology, class structure, and nationalism are vital in shaping a state's interests, perceptions, and capacity to act. Also, Class and Nation focuses more on formation in the nature of identities and class structures instead of the manifestation and consequences in high politics and security competition. War and Peace explains why Taiwan unification is a core national goal for the PRC, directly addressing these dynamics in US PRC competition and the PRC's rise. Empire and Hegemony introduces essential ideas of hierarchy versus anarchy and maintaining the right to make residual decisions where subordinate powers lack that right, requiring direct and indirect hegemonic control mechanisms. We begin to understand the PRC's rise and American hegemony's fall, with the PRC wanting to rewrite the rules of the order through neo-empirical intentions as seen as the Belt and Road Initiative, taking residual control. This balances against the United States, dueling hegemonies through hegemonic and counter-hegemonic practices. Despite providing a critical macro-level understanding of the nature of great power influence, this does not provide the primary framework for analyzing security dynamics and potential for conflict, which is inherent in the struggle for dominance. In neoclassical realism, the shift in the balance of power and challenge to existing hegemony creates conditions where great power conflict is the highest. War and Peace provides the tools to understand the means of competition and risk association with it, instead of only the goals and the arenas of competition. Critical constructivism views hegemony as involving social construction of norms and legitimacy, linked to material power and security concerns. War and Peace focuses on how challenges manifest in threats and the potential breakdown on peaceful relations. Race and gender underscores topics like identity, race, and gender and their functions in IR. Identity creates a sense of belonging, group sourcing, and othering. In turn, this creates a source of preferences of what a state like the PRC cares about. Group cohesion to convince people to fight for a cause, and identity politics are also crucial. Race and racial hierarchies introduce stratified races, structural racism, and how it plays into the global South perceptions, white versus non-white, and the third world is racialized. Clash of Civilizations reveal how race matters enormously in US PRC conflict alongside gender hierarchies. Weaponizing American racism and sexism both act as an accelerant of realism. While crucial to understand deep-seated grievances and formation of identities employed by states like the PRC, race and gender lacks the ability to assess interstate security dynamics, strategic interactions, and potential for conflict that arise when racialized and gender identities clash. These domestic factors shape a state's threat perceptions, thus influencing realist calculations, which War and Peace allows us to understand this mechanism and conditions of which these interactions lead to war. Critical constructivism acknowledges how these forces are enacted through state strategies, power dynamics, and potential for violence, and why the US and PRC view each other as rivals with deep-seated differences. Transnational challenges allow for insights into globalization's key claims such as issue proliferation and compromised sovereignty. With the rise of the PRC, this raises questions if globalization is a phenomenon of the unipolar moment. Corruption also plays a key part as PRC weaponizes strategic corruption as influenced statecraft. Critically, the environment and climate change has developed and developing countries divide, allowing understanding of why the PRC won't give up developing status to maintain benefits. Green security becomes key as environmental issues worsen and tensions rise over scarce resources. Globalization allows for the United States and PRC to benefit via movement of information, capital, technology, and people. However, transnational challenges and its frame of shared problems and systemic conditions doesn't focus on core security issues in US-PRC relations. War and Peace allows for a greater understanding of the driver of great power competition, while topics like globalization has not fundamentally altered the anarchic nature of the international system. Critical constructivism shows how state identities make transnational issues as tools. Interstate security competition is the main topic we need to prioritize, which War and Peace remains the most direct and relevant lens for assessment. Change gives a new and important understanding of IR, such as Chinese IR, Confucianism IR, or Global South IR that challenges Western IR thought. This provides essential meta-perspective to understand the nature of IR. Yet change doesn't provide the most critical aspect of global transition, which is the security implications of a rising power challenging the existing world order. Neoclassical realist perspectives show that the key form of systemic change is power transition, which is linked to the risk of conflict. War and Peace allows us to understand the consequences of this type of change and the dilemmas it creates, and the strategic responses it elicits. Critical constructivism shows how the US PRC rivalry remains driven by competing state identities and ideologies,